Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Soaring Through Chaos. And the reason we do this is because we are still in the midst of a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty. And one might always argue, but we were always in chaos, but this is an extraordinary time. And with all the economic uncertainty, health uncertainties, even political instability in many places. And amid all this, I find some people are doing an incredible job of creating community, of bringing people together in different ways. One of them is somebody I've known for much of my adult life, and that's Kiran Gulrajani. But it's interesting, we were in college at the same time, and we barely knew each other then. It was later, something like 20 years later, we discovered each other on social media that we have similar interests in terms of finding meaning, sense of purpose, and so on. That's how I really got to know Kiran. We went on a couple of trips together to learn, and I attended some of his workshops. So, Kiran, tell us about you. What do you do, and how did you end up doing all these things?
So thank you actually, Shankar, for giving me this opportunity to share. And I know that you've done this with some amazing people in this series. And I feel the best place to begin is right now. And I would like to say that life has been quite an incredible adventure, especially if one is willing to dive into the depths of life. And I have somehow always preferred not so much the shallow waters. And also, it's just been the nature of life that it's been intense. And the intensity perhaps is accentuated because of the COVID reality now. But I also understand because I have an interest in looking at the astrological patterns that we are also going through, because everything is interconnected, that it's a particularly difficult astrological phase. And we are almost like humanity is taking birth into a new era, so to speak. And many of us are sensing that in our bones. Some people call it the Aquarian age, some people call it moving into the fifth dimension. But to keep it really simple and really make it focused on my journey, I'm poised in this moment at a very interesting juncture. In the last month, 3-4 of my closest friends, there has been some crazy misunderstanding, and which has brought a lot of pain, but also pain, if one is willing to meet it, it breaks open a ground to a deeper love. Like Rumi says, that the light comes in from where there is a crack, and especially allowing the crack to happen. And I would say that in one word, my journey has been as a student of love and an exploration of the field of intimacy, relationships, human learning, transformation, awakening. I mean, there are many words, and we'll go into that. But it seems that for the nth time, it's the period of birthing pain, and I'll share some of the other junctures. But the main theme, Shankar, over the last decade, I would say, has been this question, which is many people ask, is what is our true nature? Who am I? Kind of a question. And the search for freedom, for truth, for love, for awakening, for the ending of suffering. And I feel very fortunate that if I look at the greatest gift of this life for me has been meeting incredible souls, like how we met. And I mean, this is just an example, and something opens up and you want to do this interview, and this is such a precious connection. And I have met some amazing souls across the world out of my thirst for learning, and also being in some ways a teacher. You know, the paradox of being a learner and a teacher and a beginner's mind. And the ultimate teaching and the most profound learning, I feel, is the journey of love. And to ask this question, what is love? And I'm reminded of this lines which came to me from my teacher, Raji, um, who had his spiritual awakening through Osho and Muji. And he just works with a small group of 25 of us. And he said this line, it's in Urdu, इश्क नहीं आसान, इश्क नहीं आसान, ये आग का दरिया है और इसमें से डूब के जाना है. So to translate for the English audiences, you know, it's like this love and the journey of love is not easy for those who choose to or are chosen to take that. It's a river of fire. Up to here, it's easy to understand, you know, for those who walk this path. But the last line is that the way to go through this river is by drowning in it. Doob ke jana hai. And what does that even mean, to drown in the river of fire of love? You know, you begin to discover that you don't survive. Somehow, so long as you are there, love is not. You know? And yeah, so I feel hopefully this is the time of a deep quenching and a deep thirst. I put on Facebook recently that is love about belonging or to be longing? And the truth in the lived experience is that this is not a paradox. I mean, this is a paradox, it's not a contradiction. So I noticed you unmuting. I mean, would you like to say something or ask something?
Oh no, I'm just listening. I'm just listening. And I saw that post recently, belonging and belonging. And I was reminded of how good you are with words. But this is not being good with words. Kiran, you're really speaking from your heart and more so. What I find interesting also is that your work has been inspired by people like you and me, lay people, as well as spiritual masters, entrepreneurs from around the world. One of the things I really like about your work is you don't differentiate between an Eastern approach or a Western approach, a Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere, a Hindu approach or a Christian approach or Islam. You bring in everything that makes sense into the present moment. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happens?
Yeah, I think, thank you for noticing that. And I always say that beauty is also in the eyes of the beholder, and the fact that you notice it. I feel, I mean, in a way, I've already answered that. Does love differentiate and categorize? You know, I'm fond of this anecdote where God once saw man finding truth. And he told the devil that now you don't have a job. And devil laughed in his wicked laughter and he said, you think so? Now I will help man to organize the truth. Organize love. And love and truth are organized. So my whole search has been for, and I'm kind of just getting goosebumps as I say this, that is there a ground of truth, of love, of freedom, of joy, which does not differentiate and yet honors the differentiation. So there is no opposition in this ground. I mean, religions are required because they exist, right? Various perspectives are required because they exist, right? But where am I and you and we when we are together living from? You know, once a very dear friend of mine, Abhishek Thakur, we thought of having this journey called a leap of love, where we bring together people from various fields of social transformation, business transformation, health transformation. I mean, all the fields, you know. And just yesterday, I want to share this with you, Shankar. I was talking to a dear friend, and I don't want to take his name because I don't think it's appropriate, and who actually works closely with one of the beings who I admire the most for the kind of communities and ecosystems that he has created, you know. I mean, amazing. And I was talking to him because this person who's created this awesomeness, multiple, he's a birthing ground, his work is a birthing ground for multiple ecosystems, you know, which are bringing transformation. And this man, you know, had a huge breakdown in his health and in his organization. And the next thing I know is that he's back to Lage Raho Munna Bhai. You know, breakdowns of the kind that I'm also having are asking us to slow down and meet the rhythm of life. And one of the greatest diseases of our time is busyness, you know. And I think I shared that video with you the other day of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, which you searched from YouTube and showed me. And the title of that video, you know, where Bill Gates is actually appreciating that, hey, Warren's calendar is empty and I'm like back to back to back. Both are immensely rich, but there's a difference, isn't it? And the title of the video is Busy is the New Stupid. But how many of us recognize it? And that's been my search, because the rich have a lot of money, but the truly wealthy have a lot of time, spaciousness, emptiness. And that search for emptiness has taken me into regions that not many people choose to go into.
You know, Kiran, one of the things I've learned as I worked with you, and I love the fact that there's so much humility in your work. You call it co-evolution. You have no presumption that you are the teacher and you are even the facilitator who's going to teach or facilitate. It's co-facilitation, co-evolution. One of the greatest things I've learned working with you, the few times that we have, that I have participated in your work, is that sharing is very powerful and asking questions is really, really powerful. And what questions are coming to your mind right now?
Yeah, in fact, I want to pick up this thread from what you said about co-evolution. And for me, if I was to pick up one word or two words, you know, which are the most precious that I strive every day to embody, one is love and the other is together. And these are words which cannot be defined. No, इश्क एहसास है, रूह से महसूस करो, प्यार को प्यार ही रहने दो, कोई नाम न दो. It's my favorite Hindi song, and I will translate again for the audiences who are English, that this song, old Bollywood song, says that love is not even a feeling. It's more like a feeling which is a state of being. It's not even a state of being. It's undefinable. It's an ehsas. You know, you can't translate that word, right? So let's not define it, confine it, right? You know, because it's beyond confining. So anyway, but coming back to this theme of together and co-evolution, I want to share this logo which came together. And you know, I was invited for a TEDx talk where I shared, this was something that I shared also. And just to give you a very quick thing on the logo, you can see two figures over there, right, Shankar?
Oh, wow. It takes time to see that. Yes, yes. I see two figures. Yes.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get
what
it. Yeah.
between them?
It's one of them is human and the other one looks like a bird, but I think there are multiple
Yeah.
ways of seeing it.
Multiple ways, but the intention is there are two figures, a teacher and a student. The student is sitting and the teacher is standing. So the teacher is supposed to give, no, and the student receives. But if you notice, can you see the two figures, the white and the violet?
Yes. Yes.
And at the point of giving and receiving, what do you notice? Who is giving and who is receiving?
The giver is giving with the open hands or giving, and the receiver is
Yes,
receiving. So
yes,
instead of, there's no upper hand, there's no upper
yes,
hand
yes,
giving.
yes. It's like the giving, in the giving is the receiving.
Yes,
Which is, to be visually able to capture that is such a blessing. And this logo itself has a story. We first saw some version of this at Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry. And then my then wife, Pratibha, actually captured it as a sketch. And then we gave it to an artist. And I wanted him to capture this co-evolution. That time we used to call it eternal learning, but the whole idea of together, you know. And at some point, this whole perspective, as I got into coaching, came into coaching, Shankar, and what was born is what I call radical coaching, you know. And why is it radical? Because some people we discovered together in ARC. ARC is, my third avatar of work. Eternal Learning was in 2000 with Pratibha. We started, and then when we had a mutual divorce fairly peacefully in 2009, uh, Co-Evolve was born. And then in 2018, something that got initiated, it's early days, I don't know which way it'll go, was ARC, right? ARK. And in ARC, we came together in this whole radical coaching mode where uh, we were asked to present at the APAC coaching conference last year. And as we presented it, we discovered that actually this is uncoaching, which is what is radical, because I haven't heard of a process where actually as a part of the process, you pause and look together with the coachee that what can the coach learn from the coachee?
wonderful, wonderful.
Isn't that, I mean, and actually you discover that the true coach, the true healer, the true leader is the present moment. Because
Yeah,
only when you're together in that moment, then what is here is teaching and learning. Christ said that when two of you sit together, I will be present. Now, Christ not in a very Christian mode, but just looking at it as the fact that there is something vaster here, something invisible, which powers the visible. You know? So this is the whole thing about together, and I thought I should mention that. Yeah.
and speaking of unprecedented times and changing, literally changing paradigms of life, uh, I'm reminded of the Joan of Arc. So I guess you must be the Kiran of Arc.
Yeah, I'm the K of ARC. A is Arjun, R is Rohit. But also
Oh,
interestingly, it is kind of similar to Noah's Ark, and there's this kind of correlation. And on my blog, which is coevolvewithkiran.com, I've written a poem about the journey of ARC, and really looking at ARC as a woman who I love. And
wow.
it's a very interesting thing which just came together. Sometimes these poems just come more than you write them.
Would you like to
And
share that poem?
well, sure. I mean, I'll just have to pull out the blog post. Let's see. So this is the poem that you told me to read out. I had written about ARC. And it says, ARC, how I love you. An enigmatic creature she is, like any woman, wild and mysterious. Sparkles of magic, and sometimes rather tragic. Suddenly she will come alive, pulsating, even dancing, like how she did at that coffee shop we visited. What was it called? Ah, yes, APAC, coaching conference. Coaching conference bracket, not a part of the poem. She came into my life, it was December 2018, wearing this incredible, even seductive dress of a designer brand called RCJ, which is Radical Coaching Journey. She made me come alive, and many others, like few beings have, mysterious, practical, awake, and yet not fully. She has a certain gift in intimate relationships. There is one other woman in my life, like and yet unlike her, an ancient beloved, She calls herself Tao, simply Tao. But Ark, this woman, somehow contains multiple trinities: the creator, the sustainer, the destroyer, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Tao, Sufi, Zen, freedom, love, truth. She has such a wealth of resources. Not a lot of money yet nonchalantly she walks. She knows and yet lives in the unknown. She might seduce many a soul whom my other beloved inspired. Her craft is inspiring. The world calls it coaching sometimes, or healing, or radical are her ways, refusing to fit into any framework, refusing to be tamed. Wild, wild woman. Suddenly she will seem to fall apart, breaking down and coming together again and again, and yet again. Last night she did not allow me to sleep, tossing and turning, churning and wondering. She insists I listen. I speak from my heart, or else she tells me to take a walk. Her walk is like that of a silent stream in the yonder mountain, plumbing depths of silence unknown, unbearable beauty, unfathomable chaos, untold wisdom, unwritten poetry. Ark, she has been pregnant with a child, who, as the legend of Laozi of Tao goes, was in the womb of her mother for 62 years before he was born, when she was leaning against a plum tree. She's crafting a saga of a love without a story. And these lines of a poem I encountered recently describe the invitation that is Ark. And this poem I read out, and I'll share the author, the poet. The strange thing about love. The strange thing about love is that it evicts you from the land of echoes you thought was home, and leads you to friends sitting under the stars in ancient bewilderment. This poem is, the last part of this poem, which is embedded in my poem, is by Arundhati Subramaniam in a book called Love Without a Story.
Wow, wow, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. In fact, poetry is like compact ways of learning, isn't it? It's like the formulas in mathematics or physics. Poetry is
Yes, yes.
probably the formula would not do justice to it, but it's like a
Yeah, it has a certain magic. It has a certain, like each person, you give it to 5 people and they'll take away 5 completely different dimensions of it. There are certain dimensions, it has a dimensionality and a depth. So a couple of threads I just want to mention. I've already spoken about eternal learning, co-evolve arc. I've spoken about this whole thirst and search for truth and love, about my divorce. I mean, many things have been covered actually, but just to mention my beginnings, I was born in a small town called Adipur in Kutch, where my parents had come after partition from Pakistan, and it was a settlement. And I was born at home actually, not in a hospital, in 1965 and 13th February. And after 5 years, we moved to Baroda, which is where you're sitting right now. Our roots are there somehow. And my schooling was in Baroda, in Navrachna, before I joined IIT, where we met and where we were together. And I still, there's a t-shirt I have, a red t-shirt from IIT, which has in the front two accomplishments when I was at IIT. And when you turn it around at the back, it says, somehow got in, somehow got out. But I was writing to somebody yesterday that we're taken to places not for the obvious visible reason. So it was not for me about aeronautical engineering or the technology of aeronautical engineering, but what was unfolding for me over there was the technology of human living and relationships and love. And as you know, I somehow quite curiously was thrown into this position of being the general secretary of the institute, GSSA, and that was the last year of a general secretary student affairs, because I think I made the mistake of orchestrating a split in that into hostel affairs and student and academic affairs. Today, I think it was a mistake, but anyway. And then, of course, I was picked up by HCL for a sales job selling computers. They had the audacity to come to an IIT, and I had the audacity to join them. And after 2 years, I was at XLRI, and then I joined at ITC. Somewhere I got married, difficult marriage of 17 years. And the most beautiful flower of that marriage is our daughter, Sufi. A lot of pain about separation from her. She was 6 years old and she actually went and stayed in Kalimpong. Her destiny was with her grandparents in Darjeeling for 4 years. And then she was at the Krishnamurti school, Sayadri, close to Pune. And very painful moment when I put her into the boarding school, a sense of abandoning her, feeling abandoned. Just a few months back, she's come home and she was staying with Pratibha. And just a few weeks back, she's come to this home. And so, yeah, I mean, peaceful divorce in 2009. And then right now I started with certain birthing pains I'm going through. And we'll talk more about these pieces of what I have discovered. I mean, I would say, let me end with saying the greatest discovery for me in this COVID crisis and lockdown was that existence, if you call it life, was wanting us to unlock something deep inside our hearts. We were so busy running around like plucked chicken that life had to actually lock us down in our homes. And for me, there is no doubt in my heart that life existence is asking us to come home together and alone. This journey is paradoxically alone and together. There's an old African saying that if you want to travel far, travel alone. If you want to travel long, something like that, travel together. Something like that. No, I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
And my one-liner is that if you want to travel far and long, then travel alone together. Because only when you find yourself can you truly be together. Otherwise, we're just into codependencies, So true co-evolve, the word co-evolve contains love, is also a discovery of love. And
that's true.
Yeah. So I found that, because the greatest question my life has been asking, Shankar, is that I never felt at home, even at my parents' home. Somehow, I don't know. And then at IIT, I felt a bit at home. And then in my marriage, I was not at home. And it's been a journey of coming home, really. And but this question, what is home, is as profound a question as what is love. And in this COVID crisis, in the first month, I saw that there were these 9 dimensions of home, right? And initially I saw 7 and then 2. And immediately, I was so excited about it that I offered this 1-hour Zoom sessions over 7 days, which unraveled these 7 dimensions of home. One is that our body is our home. And the vast humanity is often divorced from its own body, and to some extent, I discovered that it was about really coming into my body and paying attention to my health, which COVID is asking us to. The second aspect was of home was our intimate relationships, and so many of our intimate relationships are estranged. We've neglected them, no, for some kind of success. In the village before the Industrial Revolution, we were living together. Living, learning, and livelihood were integrated. Come the Industrial Revolution, and these three were torn as under into three institutions. The workplace was livelihood, home was about living, and there was a school which was about learning. Perhaps COVID and this crisis asking us to bring these three together again. So the second dimension of coming home together was the intimate relationships. The third is, of course, our work and our heart song. Many of us are not living the life we were born to live. We are not singing the song we were. And discovery of that is coming home. The fourth is, of course, our relationship with time, which is, of course, mind. I mean, mind is past and future. And most of us, our relationship with time, which I've spoken about earlier, is fractured, right? So, and then our relationship with money and abundance, takes us away from our home, right? But it's possible to have a healthy relationship with money and with time and with space, because time and space is really our experience of being human, right? And often our relationship with physical spaces, who we are at home, who we are at work, and life has compelled us to integrate the two now, right? And who we are at a coffee shop, who we are in a temple. We forget who we are at the core, and we become different beings over there, and it's okay. But can we come back into the ultimate home, which is this emptiness, this vastness, this ground of love and truth and freedom? So I don't think I've covered the 9 dimensions, but maybe I end on that note. And if people are interested, they come into part 2.
Wow, wow. And this is exactly why I've been hosting these Soaring Through Chaos events. So we can all learn from each other, can co-evolve. I don't have this idea that I know it all. In fact, the more people I talk to, the less I talk, because there's so much to listen. There's so much to learn from each other. And I'm humbled by how much I've learned over the last 4 months.
Yeah.
You must be surprised to listen to be with a quieter Shankar.
Yeah, we've had some real intense exchanges around this. You remember the Rishikesh days? We went there, and yeah, I mean, certainly. And one thing that I just want to say as we are ending this part is the play of synchronicity in my life and in our lives. I mean, synchronicity, I feel, is the language that life speaks to us. And slowly, as you start settling in with the rhythm of life, one of my teachers, Gay Hendricks, and Katie Hendricks, his wife, and they've written this book called At the Speed of Life. Most of us are living at the speed of the fucking mind. And what a painful speed that is. Can we return to life?
Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Well, I'll definitely share all the contact information for Kiran if you want to directly talk to him to learn more about his work, and also my contact information. And there's so much more we can learn from each other. We will have many more sessions on specific topics going forward. And please come forward if you have anything to share. I would love to hear from you as well. Anybody out here, if you have other things to talk about, let's do that. And let's share our conversations with people. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankar, for creating this incredible, opportunity. And I'm sure each being you've spoken to has been quite a person and with some incredible journeys. So I feel this is just beautiful. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing with full vulnerability with with truly who you are and what you are becoming moment to moment. Thank you.